So all protocol observed. I make this first point to say that even though it could be said that I am not from Kenya and therefore probably do not have the standing to reflect on these matters before us, I do take seriously the fact that I have lived and worked in Kenya for the last 17 years and have lived the ups and downs of the politics, the conflicts and the tensions of this country for the last 17 years. And I take great pride in saying that I have, since the last year, applied for citizenship to become a Kenyan. And I do this because I believe, not only because the Jesuits work here, we have our missions here, but because there is something to like and to love in Kenya to the point of making it a home. And I take great interest in what happens in my home. The things, the factors, the personalities that affect and shape the condition of my home. In 2007 at Hekima College, we were victims of several attacks and threats of attacks following the elections and the crisis afterwards. Today, the matter is about strengthening bottom-up social accountability and citizen participation in national and county governance. Looking at this within the context of a research conducted by Jesuit Hakimani Center. And I hasten to add that this is not the first, as far as I can recall, is the third in a series of research that Hakimani has led and conducted. But this has a special significance. It is coming at a time when, as a country, we're experimenting with a new system of governance, the centerpiece of which is devolution. I have 4 comments to make on this very solid research finding, but I'd like to introduce it with this remark. I see this as a very important research that measures the progress and evolution of the ongoing experimentation in governance. Now, we could say that considering the short span of time of the current experiment, this research project is coming a little too soon. But that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at this research is to see in it a tool or a device that provides us some early key indicators of the progress of this new system. In other words, by looking at the findings of this research, we can identify some early warning mechanisms with regards to emerging issues and the essential checks that we need to take into account concerning possible points of deviation, tension, or potential conflict. Let me focus more specifically on the research findings with 4 comments. Studying this research, it strikes me very, very clearly that the economy matters. The research demonstrates the centrality of economic factors and consideration in measuring the success of this system of devolved government. Put it simply, the economy matters. But interestingly, I believe the state of the economy also poses the greatest challenge. If economic issues are not addressed, and if there are no sufficient checks in place to monitor what I would call anti-developmental practices, such as corruption and lack of transparency, we run the risk of actually having a spiraling devolution of underdevelopment, devolving underdevelopment to all the ranks and levels of society. The indication from the research suggests that devolution could potentially aggravate the menace of corruption and therefore hinder meaningful development. Let me say something about this question of corruption. I consider it very disturbing, a very disturbing and ominous sign that for most of our elected officials under the new dispensation, the first order of business was a concerted effort to increase salaries and perks and privileges, even if it meant undermining and contravening the provisions of our Constitution. Now that is a cause for concern. What that demonstrates is that even though we have changed system, as the previous speaker said, several of the people who operate this political system are simply people who have been recycled from the old system. People for whom the new system simply means, or still means, it is our turn to eat. And we need to combat at every turn this dangerous politics of the stomach. My second point. This research focuses also on citizen participation. For the system of governance that we have adopted to work, this system that wants to devolve every aspect of government to the lowest level of political participation, for this system to succeed, and for there to be active, meaningful citizen participation, I would argue, as the research also indicates, that education is key. Education is a necessary precondition. Citizens cannot hold people in public and political office accountable if they are ignorant. If they are ignorant of their just and due rights, responsibilities, and privileges under the Constitution. Now, I believe that providing this kind of education that will strengthen citizen participation is the responsibility, first and foremost, of our civil society organizations like Jesuit Hakimani Center. But I would also add that we need to move from this practice of intensifying civic education only when there is an election. It needs to be a permanent feature of our political system. It needs to be an ongoing commitment on the part of our civil society organizations and all the other organizations that provide civic education. Greater knowledge of mechanisms of civil, political, and constitutional governance on the part of the general population would ensure inclusive and effective citizen participation. I come to my third point. When you look at the way the new system of governance is unfolding and developing, and again, when you look at the findings of this research, you notice that ignorance can give rise to unrealistic expectations. While it is important for citizens to distinguish between what is constitutionally ideal on the one hand and what is politically possible on the other, I believe it falls to our elected officials and politicians to refrain from fueling unrealistic expectations by making bogus promises or misinforming citizens about the prospects of this system of governance. Let me mention two examples which I have drawn from this research. First, how realistic is it to establish universities in every county over the next 10 years? Where will the resources for infrastructural, faculty, and curriculum and extracurricular development come from? Who is going to make the investment for sustainability? What will this mean for quality assurance and control? Second question and the second example. Could we realistically expect devolution to solve the problem of unemployment? If gainful employment is a function of economic productivity, as one of the previous speakers alluded to, I think it seems malicious for anybody to promise jobs without first creating the enabling environment for a sound and thriving economy. And that enabling environment needs to take into account issues like peace, reconciliation, and justice. The fourth and final point, again, looking at the findings of this research. Kenya is a society in need of healing and reconciliation. The peaceful conduct and successful completion of elections do not remove the need for national reconciliation. We do know, and we see that on a daily basis, that there are so many fault lines across our political spectrum, across our social and cultural and religious spectrum. We cannot overlook the potential for conflict that stares us in the face on a daily basis. Many of our people continue to hurt from unjust displacement, loss of property and land, unfair treatment at the hands of security agents since 2007. And unless and until they receive justice, we cannot hope to build a cohesive society that is needed for a successful implementation of our new system of governance. All this to say, again, joining with what one of the previous speakers said, is that as a country, we are experimenting with a system of governance that makes us a model for the rest of the region and the continent. The fact of the matter is, all eyes are on Kenya. If we succeed it is good for the region, and it is good for the continent. And we cannot afford to fail. So I would like to end, therefore, by congratulating Jesuit Hakimani Center for an opportune research so scientifically conducted, meticulously documented, and judiciously reported. And it is my hope that these research findings and the presentation of these research findings will not end this debate, that we will leave this conference energized, empowered to become agents of change and transformation to make successful our ongoing experimentation in meaningful and developmentally friendly governance. I thank you for your attention.